So good morning, guys. I've seen a lot of you sign on. Thank you so much for sharing your names and your grade levels and locations. It's good to see that we have a large representative from the state here today, and it's nice that it's virtual given the rain. So good morning and welcome to Engage OK in the Cloud. We're so glad you could join us. Our topic is supporting pre-K through 5 students with foundational mathematics. So I'm Susan Kirk. I'm the Director of Elementary Mathematics.
Hi, and I'm Gina Barnhill, the math specialist for Project Oklahoma Excel. And so before we begin, let's just review a few of our housekeeping notes to make sure things run smoothly today. Throughout this session, please keep your microphones on mute. However, our chat box will be actively monitored and we encourage you to post any questions or comments or any reflections in that chat. Also, give yourself that gift of learning. So please join in the discussion. We all learn better together. And everything that we discuss in this presentation today will be shared with you on a Padlet page at the end of our session. It's going to include all of the links to the resources. This presentation will also be recorded and be made available to you at a later time.
Next slide. And maybe we're frozen.
Okay.
There. Next.
So for today's outcomes, wow, everybody knows that we have recently survived one of the most challenging times in education. And we also know that our students may have areas of unfinished learning that need to be addressed. So today, we are going to discuss how we can support our students with foundational mathematical skills in the elementary grades, as we focus on numbers, place value, and problem solving. We will discuss current research and data that identify ways that we can help accelerate student learning. And we're also going to share strategies to you that support students to become fluent in these mathematical foundations.
So as we begin, let's wonder, what is foundational knowledge for our students? And how do we guide students to bridge unfinished learning? And guys, let's keep this in mind. Solving problems is what mathematics is all about. So with that, let's do some problem solving. This is an activity we'll call What's My Number? So take a look at this slide. It's a picture of some dice and it has 5 clues. Take just a minute to see if you can solve the problem. So as you're solving this problem, think about what mathematical actions and processes you may be using and what standards this problem could address in your classroom. I'd like for you to share your answers to the problem in the chat as well as the mathematical actions and processes that you use. So Anthony is going to put the link for the Oklahoma Academic Standards for Math in the chat, and you can find those mathematical actions and processes on page 6. And this is called wait time, where I'm quiet. That seems so strange when we're in Zoom, but I am going to be quiet and give you a chance to process this. Thank you, Gina. So I'm seeing, gotcha. I'm not seeing any responses yet in chat, guys. I'm gonna wait a few more minutes. I know it's early and it's raining and it's summer. Ah, I see a response. Oh, and another one. Good. Yes. So these types of activities are really fun for kids because they're challenges and it doesn't seem like they're having to do work because it's not a worksheet. This is a really great way to engage your students and get them going. And I see a lot of answers in the chat. Does anyone have an opportunity to think about what mathematical actions and processes they're doing? We'll go over those in just a moment. So, given that we have some answers in chat, and not sure how many of you wanted to do this, let's go on to the next slide and I'll show you one way we might have solved this problem. So the first clue tells me that the number is less than 41. So I know that means the answer can be anywhere from 1 to 40. Process of elimination, I like that. So I'll begin with 2 columns to represent a possible 2-digit number. And I know the only choices for the values in the tens column are 4, 3, 2, and 1. And I know the answers in the ones column would be 1 through 9. And they're not underneath my column, but that's okay. So my second clue tells me to cross off all the numbers in the pattern 2, 4, and 6. So because it tells me a pattern, I know it's talking about the even numbers, and I'm going to eliminate all of those. My third clue tells me that the 1 is not included, so I'm going to eliminate that. And the fourth clue tells me to look at the red die with the numbers 1, 3, and 5. So this is just to get kids to notice what they see and then to use some action with it. I know I'm to cross out the sum of those numbers, which is 9. So I'm going to cross it out. And my last clue tells me the digits 5 and 7 are not included. So when I do this, I should have the numbers 33 left. So the answer, we saw it in chat, guys, great job, was 33. Did anyone have questions or comments or thoughts? Just come off mute and tell me if you had something in there you noticed or wanted to talk about. Okay, so we'll just go on to the next slide. And I want you to think about the mathematical actions and processes. This is in your Oklahoma Standards for Math on page 6. And we'll talk about which ones of these we used in our activity. So we began with mathematical reasoning. I determined the solution was a value that was less than 41, so that let me create 2 columns for a potential answer. Could have just used 1, but I prepared for 2. Then I developed a strategy to problem solve. There's another process. When I determined I needed the 2 columns and listed the possible values for each column. I used accurate and appropriate procedural fluency when I got the sum of numbers and when I recognized the patterns as evens and deleted all of the even numbers. So the What's My Number activity used several building blocks that are foundational for elementary mathematics. Let's take a look at these. Research tells us there are 5 building blocks of elementary mathematics: numbers, place value, whole number operations, fractions and decimals, and problem solving. What's My Number engaged students to use 3 of those building blocks: numbers, place value, and problem solving. So why are these building blocks important? Well, numbers are symbols that represent and communicate meaning. Place value communicates value and comparison. And problem solving is how we make sense of patterns and relationships in our world.
Okay, so I want us to just dive in, and we're going to experience a strategy called Which One Doesn't Belong. A simple math puzzle like this can actually be used to address many different processes, as mentioned on the earlier slide. And I see that we're putting some answers in the chat. If you'll hold on for just a moment, we do want to go over a few things before we start answering this puzzle. So this type of problem can be used as a quick formative assessment to determine student academic levels, but it's also incredibly engaging as students are expected to defend and justify their thinking. It allows every student to create an answer with just varying levels of sophistication. So in a moment, we're going to give it a try, but a few things first. Don't type anything yet. So I'd like you to look at this puzzle and choose one number that doesn't belong with the other three numbers. And please explain why you think it doesn't belong. Defending your reasoning is absolutely key here. We're going to do in just a moment what we call a waterfall chat response for this problem. So with a waterfall chat, what you're going to do is think, type out your answer along with that reasoning, and then wait to hit enter until we tell you to do so. And when we tell you to hit enter, you're going to see this glorious waterfall of all of these answers in the chat boxes. And we'll give you some time to go back up and read some of those responses. But again, don't hit enter until we ask you to do so. Okay, so this is your time. Pick which one doesn't belong and give us the reasoning for why you chose that one, and wait on your enter. Just a little bit more think time, typing time. Okay, if you'll please hit enter, let's see some of these fantastic, oh wow, I love seeing that. All this wonderful chat responses. And so we're going to give you about a minute to go back through and look at some of the responses from our participants today. I'm seeing so many fantastic responses, and what I'm really interested about is that even if some people chose the same number, they didn't necessarily choose the same reasoning. So that is really exciting to see. I even see some people that are answering in ways that I would never have thought of. So I'm learning from you as well. As you have a chance to go through and scroll through our waterfall chat, let's take a closer look at just a few of these. I wanted to look at one here that caught my eye. It was from, I'm just going to have to use the username that you came in with, Brant TL. They chose 43 because a pattern of divisibility would follow 3, 4, 5, and then 6. So they're bringing in those, the objectives of divisibility rules. And then if I go up a little bit further, Angela Reed has an answer for the same number, 43, but it's because all of the other numbers are squares. 9 has the square root of 3, 16 has the square root of 4, and 25 had the square root of 5. So same answer, same number was chosen, but for different reasons. Let's see if I can, okay, here we go. Angela, same thing. Angela Tyler has 43 as a prime number. The other numbers are composite. So it's a really great way for you to be able to see what the students are actually thinking. And as you can tell here, we also have different levels, different objectives, may I even say different entries per grades, grade objectives for this one problem. 16 by Zanetta Clevenger, and she says it's because it's an even number. So even and odd numbers is a first grade objective, kindergarten objective, or first grade objective, whereas we were talking about prime and composite, that's fourth grade objective. We were talking about square roots, that's even a middle school objective. So this one simple problem is accessible to students from all varying ranges. Now, I particularly chose this problem because it was to specifically support the objective that we discussed with our icebreaker activity, which was third grade N2, add, subtract multi-digit numbers, multiply with factors up to 10, and represent multiplication and division in a variety of ways. But again, guys, we were able to use this with so many different grade levels and objectives. So when we're developing, this activity engages those students in those mathematical actions and processes that Susan was talking about earlier, and it helps develop deep and flexible conceptual understanding. It helped to develop a mathematical disposition and the ability to communicate mathematically. If you were in the classroom with students, you could have them talking and sharing their ideas with each other. And in fact, we'll see that problems like this hit various aspects of the maps at one time, as well as being applicable all the way up through those middle grades. The strength of a problem like this, which one doesn't belong, is that each student can bring their own experiences, mindsets, and explain their thinking to teachers, and so we can use it as a formative assessment. Justification and reasoning through their answers is vitally important for teachers and students alike. So I want to really thank you guys for sharing your ideas and those justifications. You can see how important they were. If you had just put up a 43, I wouldn't have been able to get into that deep thinking of why you chose the 43. And so here's just an example of that, how many similar thoughts can be found. Students can share their thoughts and justifications and see how many others had the same idea, which I represented here with check marks. They can also see visually the other way students solve the problem and hear their explanations. For example, no one else in this scenario had the thought of adding the digits together to get 7, which you can kind of see down here in the bottom left-hand corner. Their explanation was that 2 plus 5 equaled 7, 1 plus 6 equaled 7, and 4 plus 3 equaled 7, so 9 didn't fit. You can imagine the light bulbs going off in students' minds as they hear a novel idea. And in the blue section, there were no answer choices this time for the number 25 as the one that didn't belong. So that became more of a challenge for the students. I asked them to find a reason why 25 didn't belong with the other 3 numbers. So just so much deep thinking that you can ask your students to do in this type of a problem. And you can also see in this example the differing levels of sophistication within their explanations. One student in black wrote that it was a repeated addition answer. One student discussed how it's 1 and 2 digit place values. Another talked about division. Others talked about factoring prime and composite numbers. And as students are using these explanations, they're hearing multiple conceptual ideas, showing the flexibility of numbers and the beauty of math of having so many different possible answers. So now let's discuss just a bit more about mathematical reasoning related to student learning and engagement, and how it helps us as teachers to bridge the unfinished learning in our students. How often do we look at students' work and try to decode what they're actually trying to say? Every day. Teaching students how to explain their thinking is a vital piece of their overall mathematics understanding. When you ask students to explain their thinking, rather than just having them repeat the steps, it gives you more insight into what they know and allows you to dive deeper to discover their root misconceptions. Trying to fill in gaps is impossible without understanding what students are actually thinking. The window into their thinking is based on asking them questions like, why, what, how, why did you choose this strategy? What would happen if? How did that compare to another student's thinking? Questions like that. In fact, the OSDE has written the Champions Brief number 13 on this exact subject, and the link will be able to be found on our landing page that we give you at the end of this session today. As you implement the strategies that we're going to share in this session today, we would really like you to reflect on these 2 points. It's not just about students getting the right answer, because actually, when students have the right answer, we can move on. These strategies are more about listening to their thoughts and identifying how you can help them modify their thinking or misconceptions, and then guide them towards building those correct answers. So before we move on, I'm just curious, what are some of the ways that you have students explain thinking in your elementary classrooms? Just post some of the ways that you do that in our chat box. Oh, I'm seeing some great ideas in the chat, like drawing a model, having students discuss with partners, mind mapping, shoulder partners. Janet says that she uses an argue and defend method with her students. And Leslie is a kindergarten teacher and says that they hold up fingers to represent certain numbers and then explain why they show the number. Yay! I love that they have to explain even in kindergarten, right? Tanya Moody says that in pre-K, they have students show multiple ways how they can make a number with things like dominoes and dice, those manipulatives, getting those out and getting their hands on the math. Love that. A lot of discussion about manipulatives, and Paula Helm even includes something called math interviews. What an interesting idea, and I might want to learn more about that later, how they talk through how to solve the problems with her. So thank you guys so much for your responses. If you haven't had a chance to share it yet, just keep them coming in the chat. But I thank you for stepping out and sharing what you're doing in your classroom. All of these strategies that we're seeing posted in the chat and that we just discussed are great ways to have students explain their thinking in our classrooms. There are so many ways to have students participate in justification activities. And we've identified a few that you've shared, but we also wanted to identify a few on the next couple of slides that we think work really well with the strategies that we're sharing today. So using verbal explanations with your students is very effective. Have them discuss and share their ideas with a partner. I saw a lot of posts in the chat about that very thing. Elbow partners, turn and talk, think, pair, share. Have students explain or rephrase in their own words about what another person's saying. And you can even use sentence stems to help them get started. Some kids are like, I don't know how to explain. I don't know what words to use, or it's just in my head, right? So if we give them those sentence stems, something like, I got this idea because, it's just so simple, but it gets their lips moving, it loosens up their tongue and gives them something to start with. If you wanted to engage in discourse, you can give them sentence stems such as, I agree with your idea because, or I disagree with your idea because. How about ones like, mine is similar to yours, but different because. You could even give them something like, I'm a little confused on this, so can you explain more about blah, blah, blah. Using stems are appropriate for your grade is really key to encouraging that conversation in your classroom. You could even post these stems in the room or maybe just have them out on their desks during discussion times. Some students see math more visually than others, so allowing the option to explain their thinking with a visual of some kind. I think the very first post we had in chat was about drawing models. You could have them draw a picture of their solution, create a model for the thinking, or just ask, can you explain their solution in a different way? Show me your thoughts. Some other ways that we can do this is by encouraging discourse in your classrooms, what we were just talking about with the sentence stems. It's important that we teach students how to respectfully, that word respectfully, agree or disagree with mathematical ideas and establish the central point that every student has a voice in mathematics. To do this, we must first establish discussion norms. Provide examples and sentence stems of how to engage in respectful conversations. And all of these must be modeled and practiced by the teacher and the students, not just once, but consistently to really make your classroom conversations successful. We have to make the math meaningful to them and have them connect to the numbers in some way. Build on their personal experiences. Ask, hey, where have you seen this before? Or does this seem familiar in some way? Because research shows that if students can connect what they are learning to their lives outside of the classroom, the retention of the information is almost double. Through conversations about math, students hear how others connect to their experiences, and that can even spark a thought in their own memories. Reasoning is the critical piece of math lessons and student learning, and it should be the closure of every activity. It cements the learning into the brain. Listening to and looking at their work with these reasoning skills will give you the most information about where your students are at in the development of their learning. And I'm just going to pause for a moment because we have such great conversations going and postings going on in the chat. I know, Susan, you've been monitoring that as well. Do you see a few that you would like to highlight or discuss?
Well, I was just looking. It was so interesting. Heather put on there that she let her kids draw pictures and explain their thinking. And then I can't remember who it was, Becky and Anita. And so she liked to let them do gallery walks. And I love gallery walks. It gets kids out of their seat. It allows them to see other ways they could have approached the problem, which actually builds that character inside students to know that there's not just one right way, it's how we think. And then I added on, I love to give kids sticky notes and let them respond to the idea walk. It just keeps them engaged in thinking. And so we've had some really great chat responses. Thank you all so much.
So I love this quote. It is related, it's attached to an article that I read that completely changed the way that I taught in my classroom, because it's through student understanding and it's through us understanding what students are trying to say that we as teachers can identify where they are at in their learning. We can identify base misconceptions, depth of knowledge, and what questions that we need to ask in order to move the students' thinking forward. So when I read this article by Stephen Reinhardt, it was just so powerful because the power of this statement is the shift in focus from teacher to student. So in it, he says, my definition of a good teacher has since changed from one who explains things so well that students understand to one who gets students to explain things so well that they can be understood. I did include a link to his article in our landing page, and you'll get access to that at the end of the session. It's an oldie, it's about 20 years old, but it's a goodie. So if you get a chance to read this article, it was life-changing for me. And I'm glad I got a chance to share this quote with you today. Oh, Susan, I think you're still on mute. 2021.
Thank you so much. I was. That's our new catchphrase with Zoomland.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Research tells us that accelerated learning, which is teaching grade level content, is the best way to help students that may have unfinished learning. So ultimately, students taught grade level content struggle less and learn more than students who started at grade level content, but then spent time on remediation. Remember, remediation means reviewing all the content students may have missed. Don't remediate. Instead, scaffold grade level content as necessary. Activities that help students be successful will focus students on problems that offer multiple points of entry. We've just seen those. Creating opportunities for teachers to pose questions and guide students to think and reason, which is problem solving. Education works best when it concentrates on thinking and understanding rather than on memorization or algorithms. So as we look at this slide, put in the chat, what do you notice and what do you wonder? This is a splat by Steve Wyborny. What do you notice? This is my wait time. So let me start you just a little bit. We notice the number 9 in the corner in the box, and I'm going to tell you that that number represents the total value of blue dots. We also notice that there are 6 blue dots visible, and I hope you're wondering what's beneath that black splat. So my question is, can you guess how many dots are hidden beneath the splat? Put me an answer in the chat. It looks like Patrick Star. Leslie, yes, thank you, Leslie and Paula, sure. Okay, next slide. So when I remove the splat, I reveal that there are 3 blue dots hidden. Yeah, Donna, good justification. Did you guess there were 3? And yes, many of you did. Thank you for sharing. So how did you know how many dots were hidden? I like that, Gina. Yeah, how did you know how many dots were hidden? Well, it's easy for us when we look at it. We said we had 6, there are 9 total. We just take away and we have 3. So that could be a first grade activity. So when you do an activity like this in your classroom, it's important to allow the students to model their thinking, and I heard this earlier, with manipulatives at their tables, or to draw representations of the problem. And then ultimately we want them to write math sentences that represent the concept. So let's do another splat. So put in the chat, please, what do you notice and wonder on this slide? I notice there's something different about this slide than the others. I like that, Paula. Absolutely. This is a little different. Yes, Leslie. I wonder how many dots are under each splat. And I'm seeing some solutions here. Yeah, great job. So the first splat was fairly simple, first and second grade. This might be a little more advanced. You might have some, it might be a challenge for some of your younger grades. But we should probably notice that the total value of the slide is 18 and that there are 6 blue dots visible. And then we noticed, and I heard you guys tell me this, there are 3 splats. We might wonder what that means. So I'm going to tell you that each splat covers an equal number of blue dots. And some of you have already told me how many you think are hidden underneath the splats. So as we think about the number of dots under the splats, yes, Robin, there were equal numbers of dots under the splat. I want you to think about your grade levels and how you might use this activity. So put that in chat. If you teach different grades, how you might use this activity in your classroom. How could it be modified to actually work in your classroom? So share your thoughts with me on chat. Combos of 10, Leslie, absolutely, I love that. Because we work in a base 10 system, we should be focusing on groups of 10, I like that. In 5th grade, variables, I love that, Janet, there's your algebra strand. Pre-K, reveal 1 splat at a time to count on. Great, Sheila, absolutely. This engages your students and lets them practice their standards. Beginning multiplication for 3rd grade, yes. And students could create their own splats in 4th grade because they're using division now. Ooh, I'm seeing some really great responses. Gina, tell me if you pick a favorite one because they're coming fast.
They're coming fast.
I love the comparison, greater than or less than. That is huge. And we can't compare place value, guys. Yeah, 6 dots times the 3, yes. Yes, so you would actually have them think if they thought the dots were equal, Heather. That's a good idea. It's another approach, absolutely.
And they're bringing in even 5th grade objectives, like Susie is saying that she would use division to find the missing numbers, that algebraic thinking. So everything from like pre-K, Sheila shared what she would do in pre-K, all the way up to 5th grade for this one problem. Fantastic.
Yeah, I love that. The whole thing with the problem is that we can adapt them to work with our grade level. So thank you. Anthony? A number line is a strategy we could use to solve this problem. A third grade standard recommends solving multiplication facts using a variety of approaches, such as repeated addition, equal size groups, number lines, and skip counting. And we put the link to the number line in your resources as well. So on this slide, we used a number line to illustrate the total value of 18. And we counted backwards 6 spaces, representing the 6 visible blue dots to the number 12. And then we divided the 12 spaces on the number line into 3 equal spaces of 4, representing the dots hidden by the splats. So in this way, we show that there are 4 blue dots hidden beneath each splat. Students could make their thinking visible, and I would do this in my classroom, by having them use manipulatives with or in place of the number line at their desk and tables. So there are many ways that students might solve this problem. We want you to encourage students to explain their actions, which helps them develop their mathematical reasoning, their problem-solving skills, and it develops their conceptual understanding, all of which are part of our mathematical actions and processes. So our next step in this type of activity would be moving students from manipulatives and illustrations to writing number sentences. I would start with maybe to help students create a math sentence. We can walk them through steps beginning with, I noticed there were dots hidden in groups of 3. And then I knew I had 12 hidden dots that had to be put into groups of 3, and I could make my thinking visible in this way. I have 3 equal groups of an unknown value added to 6 for a total of 18. The 3 equal groups had a value of 12, and by dividing 12 into 3 equal groups, I knew there were 4 dots under each splat. It takes time for students to work through those concepts, so give them manipulatives and let them work with it. And then the math sentence, ultimately this is where we want to go. It represents our thinking, and it would look like 3 times 4 plus 6 is the same as 18. Working the math, 12 plus 6 is the same as 18. And as I complete that math, I see 18 is the same as 18. When the values are the same on both sides of the equal sign, I know that my problem solving is reasonable. That's the next step in getting students to justify their thinking. Is my answer reasonable? So translating manipulatives and pictures into math sentences is a skill that takes time, but it's the process that helps students develop a deep understanding of abstract math concepts and communicate these concepts through math symbols and equations. The building blocks of elementary mathematics provide a foundation that supports students' mathematical success as they continue their academic process.
So here is another strategy, another problem that I love to use in the classroom, and this one is called Would You Rather. Now this type of problem is implemented in a similar manner as the which one doesn't belong that we looked at before, because what you're going to have here is students are going to take a stand, make a choice, and then have to defend their choice mathematically. I don't know if you've ever played the game Would You Rather. I can guarantee you your students are going to come to your classroom, probably have experience playing Would You Rather, the card game or the online game. And so they'll be familiar with this idea. Here's the great thing about this is that honestly, you can't be wrong as long as you have a logical justification for your answer. Okay. We can accept multiple ways of their thinking. And let's just say a student defended their answer with a multiplication expression. Well, that's just as valuable when I'm looking at their level of understanding as if a student had used repeated addition or if they had to draw out a picture of the pencil going across, right, to justify their reasoning. We're talking about being able to help students bridge that any unfinished learning. And the way that we do that is by identifying their level and then thinking, oh, this is where they're at. So now I need to get them to my grade level objective. And so there's lots of different ways that we can do that. It's just that they have varying levels of sophistication in their thinking, okay? So this one problem, again, could refer to the numbers, place value, and problem solving. You could use, give them 10 blocks and number lines that they could use as manipulatives to illustrate the place value here. If you're using it for multiplication, again, get those manipulatives out if they need them for hands-on, or allow them to draw a model or verbally explain all the different modalities of how students learn can be used with these types of problems. This also would really spur discourse in my classroom, where they would really want to engage, especially if I asked the students to convince others that their choice was the best choice. You give them that, come on, we've all been at recess, right, where we've heard those kids and they like to, I will use the word argue or get others to think the same way they do. This is a great way to get them engaged with this problem, where they have to convince others. So again, justification and explanation of their thinking is key. And as stated before, it's really important though, if you're going to do discourse in the classroom, to have those discussion norms in place when implementing these types of problems. So in review, we just looked at a lot of strategies that we can use to bridge that unfinished learning. And we're able to do that because they have multiple points of entry to all the strategies that we've given you today. The what's my number, the which one doesn't belong, Steve Wyborney's splat, and would you rather. And additional strategies will be introduced in the elementary math fall regional meetings as we start school. And so you can look forward to that, and more information will be coming from Susan as we get closer to those times. So in review, these strategies today, hopefully you see how they are highly engaging and they're effective ways to support your students with foundational mathematics as we address their unfinished learning. They allow you to use a singular task that has multiple levels of entry that allows for success through their reasoning. You can effectively identify your student misconceptions and their gaps to address immediately, like within that particular lesson, or you might even choose to address those gaps later at a different time. Students will, though, view these puzzles as fun math learning while providing the teachers with formative assessments that are more than just, a multiple choice and not focused on just getting the right answer. In fact, multiple choice doesn't allow us to see what students are thinking, while these problems and these puzzles do that for us. So much of the information and strategies that we've shared today are a focus of what I do in a project called, with the OSDE, called Oklahoma Excel. For math, our year-long focus is on increasing justification and reasoning skills in our students by using these strategies and tasks such as these that help bridge that unfinished learning. We also have a networked improvement community for ELA, another one for science, and we've included a new improvement community for the early childhood team that will focus on addressing that new legislation for the Plan to Learn Act. It's going to be focusing on improving student achievement through play. Several teachers and administrators have said that Oklahoma Excel has been one of the most effective PDs that they've participated in. And I just want to tell you, we are accepting applications for teams through July 2nd, and all of the links for Oklahoma Excel will be on that landing page that we'll give you at the end of the session.
Gina, does that pay a stipend?
If you'll click on that link, there is some professional development awards that we have to give to districts, and there is stipends that are paid out for particular positions. And really, it's a free PD for the districts. It's just except for like time out of the classroom for substitute costs and travel, things like that. So yeah, definitely click on that if you are interested in learning more about the Oklahoma Excel project. And we would love to work with you guys and add you to our cohort of districts.
So the State Department has also put together a new project called Ready Together Oklahoma. This is an action plan for supporting students through the pandemic and beyond. This new webpage is developed by the State Department as a hub for resources that set the tone and expectations for future growth. So it contains guidance briefs for student learning and success, including, and these are some of my favorites, so how can schools support students with unfinished learning in mathematics? which was part of our topic today, and how can accelerated learning models support students with unfinished learning, which has been the focus of our topic today. Other resources are focused on prioritizing health and well-being, equity, engaging families and communities, like how to support student learning at home during the summer, and supporting teachers and leaders, like how instructional coaches can support teachers. So this page is continually updated as new information becomes available. Please check it often.
Right. So all the resources shared today, including this presentation deck, is going to be located on that Padlet landing page. I know I have a question in the chat from Delana about the slides. All of the sessions that are being recorded for Engage OK in the cloud will be available at a later time. And I'm going to put some links in the chat for you right now that you can use today to access everything that we've been talking about. This first one is going to be for a math survey that I'm going to allow Susan to talk about.
Okay.
I'm putting it in the chat. Sorry, Susan.
Yes, thank you, Gina. Our math survey has two questions, guys. What topics do you want to know more about this year? The best way we can support you is to ask you, what would you like to hear about? So if you'll respond to that, and you can put multiple answers in that. And the other question we had for you, if you would just share one thing you learned today that you'll take back to your classroom. When I go to professional development, I mostly want to know, how can I use what I'm hearing today? And we want to know if we were successful in giving you some activities that you can take back into your classroom and put them to use. And, you know, it'd be really nice if you had an opportunity during the year to shoot us an email and say, hey, this is how I used that activity and I loved it. I modified that activity in this way. Your feedback helps guide us on supporting you as you're in your classroom. So please just share with us, and we can't do better if we don't know better. Okay, so Gina? Do you guys have questions about the links in the chat? Did you get the code for the Mentimeter?
If you use the link, you won't have to use the code, but if you scan the QR code or just go to the website on your own to Mentimeter, then you'll need that code. I'll put the Mentimeter code in the chat in case they need that, Susan.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Heather, for sharing with us about the activities. We have a lot of activities. We just didn't have enough time to present all of them, and we didn't want to load you down with too many. But I love the what's my number type of activity. It gets students engaged in thinking. So we just wanted to share everything we could today without being too much. Thank you, Zanita. Zanita, I wish you'd unmute and say your name for me. Zanita?
Zanetta.
Zanetta. Okay, thank you. I hate to mispronounce names, and yours is not one that I see very often. So Zanetta. Yeah, there are several What's My Number, and I hope this fall I can bring you some others. This is Steve Wyborney. He has a whole page, and we have links in Padlet. He has PowerPoint presentations that you can download and use in your classroom when you're doing splats. He has different grade levels. And if you're doing fractions, I saw some of my 5th and 6th grade teachers. He has the rare red splat, and I referenced it in my last newsletter because I kind of seeded it ahead for this conversation, if you had the chance to read it. So anybody else have questions or things they're looking for that they're not being able to access through that link? We're here to answer questions for you. Yes, Leslie. Scaffold grade level learning with areas that might have been missed. It was much more effective when we scaffold than if we just go back and reteach standards we think they've missed.
And in fact, research shows that if we just remediate students and don't expose them to the actual grade level learning that they are required to know, even if they're a little bit below where we want them to be, if we don't give them access to the grade level objectives, they'll never get caught up. There's multiple research out there for that. And so these types of strategies that we've given you today, you can see where they are, but yet again, it gives them access to these questions that are on grade level. We've got to give them those experiences.
And Stephanie, yes, that Padlet page is going to stay up there. We will not take it down. So I think it's indefinite until we take it down. So it'll be available to you. We also put the links to the research. What else did we put in there, Gina? I've forgotten now. Articles. I know we put links to articles that support some of the topics we've done. There's just so much that it's hard to get to all of it. Thank you, Vicki. We appreciate those kind words.
Oh, and Regina, I just want to share her comment. So that she says that I love this idea of scaffolding teaching. I know I have spent tons of time in remediation and I could see that it was not getting us anywhere. Girl, I'm with you. I did that. I think all of us have had to do that in the classroom. And that you're right, that idea of scaffolding teaching, it really is the best way to go with our students. Okay, Keaton has a question, Susan. Is there any concern with telling a student they don't have to be right as long as they can defend their answer?
Well, that is a really good question. And that we want to problem solve, but remember on the slide what I did was flat where we walked through equations and I said your answer has to make sense. That's kind of the catch-22 right there. We want them to reason and justify, and when we do, they've made their thinking visible and we can see where they've actually gone off the topic and gotten lost a little bit. So the answers do need to be correct, but I think that getting them to think and process is the first step, and that leads to the correct answers. So like on which one doesn't belong, there isn't a right answer. They're welcome to go in there and explore all of the different ways, which is great for number sense. And I'm just going to tell you guys, number sense is one of the biggest stumbling blocks for students as they move on into the higher math task in the algebra. Division is certainly a challenge in fractions because they struggle with number sense. So the more activities we can do that let them practice their number sense and see other ways of getting there, the strength of those activities is they learn more ways than the way they know. So yes, the right answer is important. But
Susan, I also want to address Keaton's question in that research from Jo Boaler, if you haven't followed her on ucubed.com or her work out of Stanford University, she has done research on the brain. And directly to Keaton's question about them not having to be right, there is research that when a student makes a mistake, their brain is firing when they make those mistakes. And so what's important is that, you know, it's okay for them to be wrong and they justify their answer, because really, are we going to take a grade on any of this? No, the reason why we're using these strategies is so we can identify what misconceptions they have. So if they're wrong in their answer, that's okay. Give me your explanation so that I, as a teacher, know where you're making your mistake and I can address that with you at a later time. At the same time, we want them to feel free to make mistakes. Our math classrooms are not meant to be mistake-free regions of the building, right? They need to feel comfortable with making mistakes and understanding that through making those mistakes, we are learning. If we're not making mistakes, where's the new knowledge coming in? You know what I'm saying? We should have that classroom environment. I'm so glad you asked that question, Keaton, because yes, I don't feel like there's a concern with telling a student they don't have to be right. I will tell a student that, you know what, we're not quite there yet, but let's figure out a way that we can get you to the right answer. Okay. So yes, that goes back to that Jo Boaler research out of Stanford University. Thank you so much for asking that question.
yeah, it's an important question, and it was actually a topic that Gina addressed as she was going through those activities. We need to know where the errors are so that we can help them. Yes, and Leslie.
Well, I have to give him a big hand because he's been our moderator guru for the day behind the scenes. And he has a great comment on here that I want to share. I don't know if he'll unmute and share his comment himself. He can feel free to do that. Or he's doing so many tasks at once, he may not be able to. He said,
sure, I can do that.
There he is. Great. Okay. Thanks, Anthony. Anthony, why don't you introduce yourself so that people here know who you are and what you're doing now at the SDE with us.
All right. There we go.
Put you on the spot.
So I'm Anthony Purcell, and I actually just joined OSDE. I am the director of high school and college math readiness. And one thing that I always did with students was, I didn't care if their answer was right or wrong. In fact, I would have students who I knew their answer was wrong, but they defended it in such a way that some people who had the correct answer would start to listen and go, oh, I understand that. But as they're talking, they realize, oh, yeah, that's not the right answer. And they're able to talk through their mistake and share their error. And I saw a couple of other comments in there that said the same thing, that understanding where you make mistakes actually helps you understand why your answer isn't correct.
Thank you so much, Anthony. And yes, welcome Anthony to the SDE. He has been an integral part of Oklahoma math leadership in our state for quite a while. And we're so happy to have him join us in his important work here at the SDE. And again, you guys have so many great comments. We've got a few more minutes. So if you have any more questions for us or any more comments that you'd like to share that you couldn't include on the Mentimeter, please go ahead and put those in chat, because the chat will be recorded along with our presentation today and be accessible for review, okay? So we can come back to it later. Oh, and Susan, thank you for putting in the UCubed website. And I know I've missed a few comments, but I just love everything that I'm reading. Heather Hale, I'm going to share your comment. She says that with remediation only, they never get truly caught up. Students stay in class to get grade level content with her, and then I cover concepts that they don't really get in small groups, going along with that scaffolding learning that Susan's been talking about today. It's really an integral way of doing that. Donna, you're right. Making mistakes is how we learn. And so we've got a few more minutes, and Anthony has put up our information again. So please feel free to reach out to either Susan or I here at the SDE if you have any more questions, or even resources. I love getting resources from teachers that I can go and look at myself, because I don't have the time to, scour the internet, and I love getting links and things to look at from you. So feel free to email us if you have, again, resources, questions, anything else you'd like to add. Susan, is there anything?
Yes, so we do learn better when we share together. That's really the nice part about being here today, is an opportunity to share some things with you and to hear back from you. Yes, Christine, you're exactly right. Adults have a hard time, and they're going to struggle because they lost those basics. So that's what we're doing in our classrooms now. We're working really hard. And again, I'm going to bring it up. Number sense and fluency are huge. The more we can get our students prepared with that, the better success they're going to have as they move on in math. I just want to thank you all for joining Gina and me and Anthony today. You've seen him behind the scenes. We're glad you could be here, and we appreciate your contributions that you provided with your participation. That's really what makes these presentations valuable. We hope we've provided you with activities to take into your classroom this fall, and these activities should guide you to assess student learning, to provide you with opportunities to scaffold student knowledge as you teach grade level content, and develop deeper math knowledge in your students. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. And we'll stay on if you have anything in the chat you want to talk about. Thank you so much.